My name is Marlene Orozco, and I have the honor and privilege of being with you here today. But before I get started or continue to talk about Hispanic data, insights, and trends, I would be remiss if I didn't pay honor and homage to those who are in the crowd today. I have the great honor and pleasure of having my mom here today. Yo soy una hija de mi madre. And she told me I needed to give her a shout out, so I wanted to get that out of the way. So I come to you from California, and I've been leading the research initiative at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative, for a few years now. And we've been gathering data to better understand both the opportunities and the challenges facing Latino business owners across the country. So I'll share some data with you. Now, you just heard it. And it's not a surprise, but Latinos are a large and growing population in the United States. What is less well known, however, is that Latinos are actually starting businesses at a faster rate than all other demographic groups. In the last 10 years alone, the number of Latino business owners has grown 44%, compared to just 4% for all others. And on this trend line that you can see here, the green line up above is the rate of self-employment among the white population. It is on a historical decline. And then you can see the red line of Latino self-employment rate over time. It is on a historical incline. Certainly in the far future, we can see where these two lines might intersect. So again, I come here with a story about trends and opportunities related to Latino business owners. We're certainly still experiencing the pandemic. We had a long wait ahead in front of COVID testing and vaccination protocols, because we're still in the thick of it. So I do want to spend some time talking a little bit about what those challenges have been. Now, when we started our initiative in 2015, we noticed that Latinos were starting businesses at a faster rate than all others, but the support for Latino businesses was slow and far behind. Now, we conducted a thought experiment. We said, what would happen if we just focused on growing and scaling the existing number of Latino-owned businesses in this country to grow their revenue to be comparable to that of their non-Latino counterparts? And we found that there would be an additional $1.4 trillion added to the US economy today if we just took that step. So this is an important economic opportunity for the country. Absolutely, lots of woo-woos for that. Now, I talked a little bit about how we've been doing this work since 2015, far before this trend of DEI, and really, again, we wanted to get ahead of the curve. And Stanford was the right place to do it. Again, we saw what the business trends were. It's an immense economic opportunity, and all trends of the economic of the nation are really going to depend on what happens for Latino business owners. So this past year, in the middle of the pandemic, we conducted a large survey of 7,000 business owners. And this was the first time we also had a benchmark comparison group of white non-Latino business owners. Now, we've been doing this again since 2015, digging in deep on Latino businesses specifically. Now, we've been cautioned today that we're not about fragmentation. We want to tell a unified story, but it is important for the purposes of research to have a large data set to understand segmentation. There are absolutely important regional differences, gender differences that we consider with our data set. And the census just didn't dig deep enough for our purposes, so we collect our own survey. This year, we launched a survey of 15,000 business owners, half of whom self-identify as Latino, half of whom self-identify as white. We're going to be releasing that State of Latino Entrepreneurship report at Stanford Graduate School of Business, January 28. I encourage you all to attend, network, similar to here in person, or catch the release of those findings via virtual format. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some trends that we uncovered last year with our State of Latino Entrepreneurship report. And again, we really wanted to hammer in on what some of the growth trajectory had been prior to the pandemic, so that as we think about reshaping and rebuilding the US economy, we can get back to what those pre-pandemic trends were. And so I'll start here with a figure of the United States. And you can see the growth trends of Latino businesses growing in 45 out of 50 states at a faster rate than the business growth. And you can see here the average was about 6%, and you can locate your state. I know we come from all across the country today. This figure here shows industry growth. So you can see all of the industries that are represented above the blue line. They have a faster growth rate than the national average. I think oftentimes when we stop to think about who a Latino business owner is, we may think of a singular industry, and that's certainly not the case. We're seeing Latinos start businesses in virtually all industries prior to the pandemic. And again, the size of the circle there on this figure corresponds to the volume of that industry representation. So construction industry, right? There's a new infrastructure plan that just passed. Latinos are over-indexing in the construction industry, a key segment to consider. Now, again, I talked about how last year we looked at comparisons across non-Latinos, so the white business population. And we found that we wanted to look at revenue growth. And over a 2-year period, we looked at the compound annual growth rate of the revenues of Latinos compared to white-owned businesses. And over a 2-year period, Latinos are actually outpacing revenue growth to their white counterparts. Now, this might seem puzzling to some, oftentimes because we hear one of the biggest barriers facing Latino business owners is access to capital. So if Latinos have growth rate in revenue and they're starting across virtually all industries, we need to stop and ask why some of these challenges in access to capital persist. And in fact, when we conducted a regression model, we looked at the odds of loan approval for a Latino business owner that is comparable in industry, in revenue size, in growth rate to a non-Latino business. And we found that if simply by being Latino, your odds of getting loan approval from a traditional source, national banks, are 60% lower. Now here again, we controlled for the credit scores of the business owner, the revenue size, the industry, and the revenue growth. Now, we didn't dump everything into the model, but with those key variables, again, we found that there were some big discrepancies in terms of outcome. Said differently, here we looked at the funding needs met for loans that were requested over $100,000, and we looked at businesses that were scaled, those that are generating at least $1 million in annual revenue. We looked at growth rate again here, and a number of other characteristics that are positively correlated to scale. And we saw again here, as this figure shows, immense gaps if you're Latino compared to non-Latino. Now, in terms of considering segmentation, throughout the course of the pandemic, Latinas were one of the largest hit groups, experiencing business closure at twice the rate of their Latino male counterparts. So this means that it might take Latina business owners longer to recover and certainly require kind of more specific focus and resources. Prior to the pandemic, Latinas were starting businesses at a faster rate than their male counterparts, really carrying this growth that you see in all of these figures. So again, here this figure just shows that Latinos were reporting large negative impacts at a higher rate relative to the white female counterparts, male counterparts, etc. Now, one of the shining lights of the pandemic that we saw was this robust coalition of leaders, certainly those who are gathered here in this room, really streamlining resources of the ever-changing landscape as it relates to relief aid, namely from the census, the Paycheck Protection Program, which deployed over $800 billion to small businesses. Latinos were largely shut out on that first round, again, because this was largely being funneled through national banks, where our research has shown that there was not prior existing relationships, or even among the business owners that had a primary banker with a national bank, there are a number of stories about challenges in getting their bankers to answer their call for the PPP. Nonetheless, we found this coalition of resource sharing among those who are networked. So Latino business owners that participate in formal business organizations were more likely to experience funding success as it relates to the PPP. They're more likely in general in pre-pandemic times to come into access with capital providers. So the work that you all are doing together is really key in terms of supporting business owners. Now, I want to end here with some pandemic bright spots and a teaser for our next State of Latino Entrepreneurship report. Again, we're going to continue to uncover what the ongoing impact is from 2020 to 2021 with the group of 15,000 business owners. And you'll hear again some challenges as it relates to access to capital. But I want to highlight for you here a few pandemic bright spots. In conducting interviews with Latino business owners, and also those data that were revealed from, the findings that were revealed from the latest survey showed these bright spots. There was a vast improvement of technology. In order to survive, you saw this transfer of businesses conducting classes via Zoom. A revenue stream that they thought was going to have to be shut out because of the pandemic, now pivoted and is in an online format. We see this event being streamed. Again, we're able to connect to wider audiences with this new mode of work in reality. So I'll end here, as my time is up, with a brief call to action. Now that you are equipped with what these numbers are, I hope that you share them widely, you disseminate them. It is important to know that we have strength in numbers, but we need to know what those numbers are. So share them. If you have media contacts, we're constantly sharing these data points widely to reach wide audiences. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me offline. Thank you.